Alright, so today I want to show you how to make some bright and flashy ball pythons, and I want to start using relatively inexpensive jeans, probably some jeans you can pick up for less than $100, and you can start mixing those jeans together. And I'll start with like the base morphs and then keep adding more and more jeans on top of it, and we'll get these combos to look brighter and brighter and brighter, really flashy. And then at the end I want to show you kind of a shortcut that you can use to get there a lot quicker and make some even more intense combos, but it's going to cost you a little bit more money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the internet and I want to show you how to make some incredibly bright and flashy ball pythons. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with the Pastel. The Pastel makes a really good building block for building some really amazing, colorful, and bright morphs. And the Pastel is kind of tricky too because there's several lines of Pastel. Some of them are really bright yellow, some of them are not that bright. And if you just have a Pastel and say, yeah, that's a pretty impressive snake just by itself. The problem with Pastel, I'd say, as it grows and ages, as it matures, it actually browns out quite a bit. Some pastels can actually keep quite a bit of brightness, but I'd say in most cases pastels tend to brown out as they get older. So there's something you can actually add to a pastel to increase the brightness and really keep the contrast as the snake matures, and that is the fire. Take a look at this. This is actually a fireball python, and I would say the fire kind of acts a little bit different in combos than just kind of the appearance of looking at the standalone fire. At first you would think it's not really that impressive as far as what it can actually do in combos, but believe it or not, this will actually brighten a lot of the yellows and it really cleans up a lot of the background, especially if you have a xanthix. You add pastel and fire to a xanthix, it makes for a really crisp and clean white background in the xanthix. So this is what happens when you take fire and you mix it in with pastel. You get a firefly, even more impressive. And I've actually seen some fireflies that are pretty good size that are really absolutely stunning, really stunning snakes. Looks better than a pastel at that age. Pastels brown out a little bit, but when you add the fire to it, it keeps the color as it matures. It's pretty awesome. And there's another gene you can actually add to this combo to make it even brighter, and that is the Yellow-Belly. And I'd say the Yellow-Belly is kind of like fire. It's kind of a sleeper morph. You wouldn't actually know, you know, a lot of times people actually produce Yellow-Bellies, and most of the times you can't tell much of a difference between a Yellow-Belly and a normal classic wild type ball python. This almost looks like a normal, and I'd say on Yellow-Bellies sometimes they'll have a little white coming up, a little bit of flaming, really slight differences in the Yellow-Belly. And I'd say not all Yellow-Bellies actually have a yellow belly, so you can't actually tell the difference that way. It's kind of a tricky morph, but when you mix it in combos, it makes some stunning combos, especially if you're looking for some really bright and flashy combos. So this one happens when you take the firefly and you add the Yellow-Belly on top of it. Take a look at this. This is really impressive, and it's kind of interesting on this one. The background is really dark and it really pops out the yellow even more. And if you actually look at some firefly Yellow-Bellies and kind of line a whole bunch of them up side by side, there is significant difference between, it seems like the different lines of pastel and fire and Yellow-Belly kind of making a different visual appearance. And this is kind of one of the brightest ones I pulled out, but you pretty much mix this with anything, the firefly Yellow-Belly, and you get a really bright, flashy snake. So if you actually took this snake and you decided, all right, so I want to keep this really bright, flashy snake, but I want to jumble up the pattern on this snake. There's a few ways you can do it. And one of the things that you have to think about some of the genes, like for example, you can add GHI, which is, it jumbles up the pattern, but it's also a dark morph. So it really darken the snake, and that's not what we want to do. We want to keep it bright. And one gene that really scrambles up the pattern, but keeps it really bright, that is Leopard. And this is what Leopard looks like here. This is just the base Leopard, and the Leopard is probably the king of combos when it comes to mixing in with other genes because it scrambles up the patterns on the snake, but it keeps the original color. It doesn't really distract from the original color that you're shooting for. So if you're actually shooting for a really dark morph and you add Leopard, it stays dark. If you have a really bright combo like we have, like kind of what we're working for, and we want to scramble up the pattern, you can add Leopard. So here's what happens happens when you add Leopard to the Firefly Yellow-Bellied. Take a look at this snake. That is really crazy. Probably one of my favorite combos when you're mixing all those genes together. So this actually has, if you're wondering about the genes, we're kind of losing track here. This is actually the Yellow-Bellied, Pastel, Leopard, and Fire. So the Pastel and the Yellow-Bellied and the Fire really bring out the brightness of the yellow and a lot of the contrast, and then the Leopard really just kind of jumbles up the pattern. If you actually take a look at the snake, the price on this is only $350 for 4 genes in a snake, which is pretty amazing. This is kind of the low end of the genes. You start mixing all these genes together, it's not really that expensive. So here's another one. You can actually add Orange Dream to the mix. Orange Dream is another gene that actually enhances the brightness and the kind of the orange, brings out a little bit of orange, but I'd say it also makes for some really amazing, super bright snakes. This is actually the Firefly Orange Dream Yellow-Bellied, which is actually 4 genes here. And the problem with Orange Dream is now you're getting a little bit more expensive when you add Orange Dream. This one was actually $500 plus $60 shipping. And the tricky thing about Orange Dream is there's some really high intensity lines of Orange Dream which are really super expensive, and there's some Orange Dreams that are almost equivalent to Pastel in the brightness, but some Orange Dreams, especially the super Orange Dreams, can be just phenomenal. It's pretty amazing. So here is that same one with the Orange Dream, but we added Leopard to the mix. So this is actually the Firefly Leopard Orange Dream Yellow-Bellied. A lot of genes all together. So essentially what this is we're adding the Leopard to jumble up the pattern. Makes for a really impressive combo. And then we add the Pastel, Yellow-Bellied, Fire, and Orange Dream to really bring out the brightness of the snake. Makes for a really incredible combo. So you can actually take this snake and say, for example, if you wanted the same snake, the brightness of this snake, but instead of this really busy pattern, you wanted to reduce the pattern, kind of calm down the pattern a little bit, you can actually add Enchi, and this is an Enchi. I'd say between the Enchi and the Leopard, they're probably the best you can actually add to combos. The Leopard really just kind of makes the pattern explode into a whole bunch of little bits, and the Enchi actually really reduces the pattern and kind of calms it down a little bit. Kind of depends on the effect that you're going for. And the Enchi, I would say it's sometimes it has a little bit more yellow coming out. So if you're actually shooting for a yellow combo and you add Enchi into the mix, sometimes it even enhances the yellow color of the final snake that you're going for. So take a look at this. This is pretty incredible. This is with the Enchi in the mix instead of the Leopard. You can see there's a little bit more yellow actually coming out, probably from the Enchi. And also keep in mind, this is actually a high intensity Orange Dream, which is usually really super expensive, and it also has Enchi, Pastel, Fire, and possible Yellow-Bellied. I'd say it probably has Yellow-Bellied based on the intensity of the color of the snake. And if you actually look at the price on this one, take a look at this, $2,500, and most of that price right there, that is coming from the high intensity line of Orange Dream, which is, it's pretty rare, and there's some people that only work with the high intensity. It's kind of really hard to actually get into that project. And here's another one. As a matter of fact, you can pretty much bypass all these genes. I'm going to show you a shortcut where you can get there a lot quicker. You can actually take the Super Orange Dream. So some of the Super Orange Dreams, especially the high intensity Super Orange Dreams, just by itself is almost equivalent to all those genes together. You know, the Pastel, the Yellow-Bellied, and the Fire and all that. You can just kind of bypass all that and just go with the Super Orange Dream. And that's what this is, really super bright snake. The problem is if you actually get into the Super Orange Dream, the high intensity lines, it can be incredibly expensive to get into the project. So here's another one. This is actually the Super Orange Dream with the Fire and the Yellow-Bellied in the mix. And I'd say this picture is probably underexposed a little bit. I'm sure this is just like super bright. It's probably so bright the camera can't even accurately take a picture of this snake. It's pretty incredible with all those genes together. And it almost seems like there's a little bit of Enchi in here, something. The pattern is slightly reduced. And I want to show you a couple more examples what you can do with the Super Orange Dream. Take a look at this one. This is is an amazing snake. Some of these snakes are so incredible. This is actually the Super Orange Dream, the Spider, and the Yellow-Belly. So you're taking the Super Orange Dream and adding Yellow-Belly, which enhances it even more. And then you're adding the Spider on top of it. And for some reason, the Spider and the Orange Dream go together like no other combos. Just makes for some really impressive combos. And the Spider essentially has this kind of this spider web pattern down the top and brings up a lot of white up on the sides. And I wanted to show you one more with the Super Orange Dream. This one is so amazing. This is the Super Orange Dream Sugar Spider. And remember, the sugar is actually kind of a different line of calico, essentially the same thing as calico, where it brings the white up even more on the sides of the snake. And just take a look at this thing. This is just so amazing. Super Orange Dream Sugar Spider. And the spider, you can definitely tell it's still keeping some of the spider pattern right down the top of the snake, but it's definitely being reduced from the sugar. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Mr. McApplesauce asks, what is that thing you always wear on your wrist? Is it something to do with the snakes? That is a very good question. As a matter of fact, this is the little thing I wear on my wrist. This is actually a remote control that turns my camera on and off. I'm actually using a Canon 77D, and there's a few different ways you can actually record videos. I choose to actually use a remote to turn it on and off. You can also reach up and hit the button and then kind of trim it in post. When you're editing the video, you can actually trim it down and trim off the where you actually reaching up and hit the button. You can do it different ways, but I just choose to use this little button, and it just makes life a lot easier. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.